I'm Craig Finn. I sing and play guitar in the Hold Steady.
And that you know you're being filmed for Color Me Obsessed and you're cool with the footage being used.
I'm being filmed for Color Me Obsessed, and I'm cool with the footage being used.
Okay. First question, which I'm glad he doesn't get to hear. Same question for why the replacements?
The Replacements were growing up in Minneapolis, they were kind of the first band that I saw that made me think I could be in a rock band. I understood at the time that I could be in like a punk and hardcore band. But when I saw the Replacements, they were very believable. I always say to people that I never knew anyone as a kid that looked like Steven Tyler. I didn't know that, like, I thought rock people were people that descended from some mountain, some rock mountain, where Paul Westerberg, Tommy Stinson, Bob Stinson, Chris Mars, they were all believable. Like, not only did I know lots of people that looked like them, I actually would see them sometimes on the street, and that was very empowering. And I guess the other thing for me about the Replacements that make them, to this day my favorite band is that the range of emotions they had. I mean, to have Unsatisfied on the same side of a record with Gary's Got a Boner is, it's everything. It's everything from being this sort of tough and dumb and big, loud guitars and somewhat abrasive or annoying to something that's really vulnerable and sensitive, like Unsatisfied.
Now you grew up in Minneapolis, right?
Mm-hmm.
When did you first hear the band? How old were you? So take us through a little of your history.
I think it was the summer of 1984. I was playing tennis with a friend of mine, Sig Euland, at Interlochen Country Club in Edina, Minnesota, and we were talking about music, and I said I liked the Ramones a lot. And he said, if you like the Ramones, you should check out the Replacements. And they're local. They're a band from Minneapolis. I think his sister might have known one of them, an older sister, but I'm not totally sure about that. So I went and got Hootenanny and just started listening to it all summer and got really into it. Color Me Impressed was my favorite song. Heyday I really liked. The faster stuff. And then Let It Be came out, and it was a big deal. It came out on a Tuesday, as records do, and I lived out in the suburbs in Edina, and I couldn't get to the record store to get it because, in the pre-internet world, in the pre-Kurt Cobain world, the Replacements records were not in Music Land or the stores in the malls near where I lived. So I would have needed to go to an independent record store, which in my case was Orfolk Jokopus, and I needed a ride there, or I needed to get there somehow. And so my dad had played golf that day, but I came home and I was kind of asking for a ride, and I think he could sense it was really important to me. So he drove me down to get Let It Be. That was Saturday. I'd waited Tuesday to Saturday without getting it. It was kind of driving me nuts, knowing it was out there. And so I went to, I got it. And my dad, knowing it was kind of a big deal for me, decided to pay for it, and which was really cool. And I remember the music store clerk turning down the stereo, which was really loud, and he said, point at my dad, who was wearing his golf outfit, by the way, said, cool dad. And then he looked at me, he said, cool kid. And, that today is my favorite record, Let It Be. I still can kind of smell the autumn Minneapolis air. I was in 8th grade that year. And then the next year I transferred schools. I turned 14 and I went in 9th grade. I went to a new school, Breck School. And it was that September that I first saw them. I was the Tim album release shows, and I went to there were 5 shows at the entry. I went to one of the all ages shows. Maybe it's September, October, I can't remember, but that fall. So I would have been 14, and that's the first time I saw them live, and it was like, wow, I'd seen them photos and all that, but I hadn't really seen the shambles of what one of their shows could be.
I always heard those 5 entry shows were pretty much on though.
Yeah. There were times where it was on, but I'd still never seen a band. I mean, I'd only been to like real big concerts before then. I guess I'd been to a couple like punk rock things, but I didn't expect them to, do Kumbaya or things, some of the things that they were doing. Kumbaya. I remember they played, Jumpin' Jack Flash. I think they opened up with White and Lazy that first show with the harmonica, and. They had this huge banner, which was the weirdest outside on the entry that said soda pop 25 cents or something like that, which I never really understood what. Maybe that was just like the all ages thing or something.
That was in the rider Steve McClellan told me that. That was in the rider that they insisted from the all ages show there was like cheap soda pop for the kids.
Yeah, and it was 25 cents. It was like, and everyone, back then, of course, the one thing I remember about going to all ages shows is you could smoke still, in a club, and so to be 14 and being able to go somewhere and just watch rock and roll and smoke cigarettes was intoxicating enough.
Do you remember what Bob was wearing?
No, I don't. The one thing about that show is it was hard for me to see. I was not tall, and it was very crowded, and it was kind of bashful about pushing my way up front. So I didn't.
That's just small.
Yeah, and it was such a small room, and it was crowded, and I was a bit intimidated. So I didn't. There was never a part where I got a great views of the show, but it kind of bounced around. Was looking over people. But they used to do this thing, yeah, 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 yeah. It was like a song that just, yeah, 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 yeah. And they'd pull people up and do that. I remember that was being really cool.
How many times did you end up seeing him after that?
Probably like 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any more with Bob?
Yeah. I saw him right at First Avenue. They did First Avenue right after Saturday Night Live, maybe that next week. And I saw that all ages show. And that's the best replacement show I've ever seen. They were on. They did Rock and Roll All Night. They did. They were so good. Like, it was just like, I think they came out and did Taking a Ride maybe, but it was all cylinders firing, and it was every bit as good as a rock and roll band can be.
Again, any weird outfits from Bob?
No, I don't remember. The one thing I do remember is that they did Answering Machine. And Bob and Tommy were kind of like wrestling in the back while Westerberg was doing the song. And then it got up to the part where they all kicked in. They kind of straightened up and kicked in. And it was like this great drama that was playing out behind the show. And then, so that was my favorite show and that I think I've ever seen.
Ever?
I think so, yeah. I mean, it's hard because it was all a long time ago, but I just remember being like thoroughly convinced I'd seen the greatest rock and roll band in the world, and it was that same year. It was I'm pretty sure my same 9th grade year. Maybe it was 10th grade. No, it would have been 9th grade.
Now, tell us a little bit about what led to you. Was Lifter Puller the first band?
Yeah, that was really my first real band.
Right. What? Take us up to, how much of an influence did Replacements have on you, first picking up a guitar or writing a song or what have you?
Well, I think that they really, like I said, they sort of made me believe as a teenager in Minneapolis that I could be in a band. Mm-hmm. The idea of it in itself was sort of strange, So it just made me really interested in music. They were my favorite band, but of course then there was these other bands. Through going to the Replacements, and then going and then learning first about the Replacements, but then I heard Husker Du, and there's another great live band to go see in Minneapolis, and then Soul Asylum, which was kind of seemed like a distillation of the two of them. So I would go see all those bands, and then I just started going to tons of shows. I moved to Boston to go to college, and ended up going to, same thing, just kind of going to lots of shows, and then moved back to Minneapolis just because I thought it was a better place than Boston to have a band, and started Lifter Puller, and it was, I guess the Replacements are my favorite band, but it was also, they led me into sort of this whole indie rock world that kind of captured my imagination, made me want to be a part of it.
Did you ever become friends with the guys from Gravel Pit when they were from Boston? Remember that?
No, I remember the band, but I don't know them.
Okay, because Ed from Gravel Pit is one of the producers. He did handle all the Boston stuff, but got me people like Bill Jadnovich.
Sure.
And people like that.
Yeah.
Up there, but and he's with True Division. I didn't know if you knew. It seems like it's a real small world even though it seems huge. It's
yeah.
Like Elizabeth's been doing music for my movies for a while.
Oh, really?
Since their first album,
Sure.
First album.
Yeah, Sarge and Lifter Puller played together a bunch, so that's how that's.
Yeah, I mean, that was that. But again, I don't know what it is. It's like sometimes I think with bands like that, I don't know. It's like were her lyrics too intelligent for the average?
Yeah.
Yeah. But take me now through their catalog? What I mean, you got Hootenanny and Let It Be.
Mm-hmm.
Did you go backwards to get the older stuff?
Yeah.
What then started sticking out to you? What, did
Well,
you lose them?
I got Hootenanny, and then I got and then I went back and got but before I had Let It Be, I went back and I got Sorry Ma and Stink. And I remember being young and being pretty into like punk and hardcore too, and really getting into that, and that kind of fulfilling this, being more closer to some of the other stuff like Black Flag, or that what I was listening to also. Things like Kids Don't Follow and Fuck School are very good music for an 8th grader. Stuff that you can really relate to. But what I really loved was Sorry Ma. And what I really loved about Sorry Ma was reading the liner notes. They had those really funny liner notes, like that struck me as really self-depreciating in a way that I guess I hadn't really seen bands before. Like rock band, I always thought was supposed to be cool or something, and their liner notes, I can't remember what song, but it was like, could have been better if we would have tried harder. I thought that was a really funny sentiment because there was people there's just like captured that kind of stoner, just like fucking around kind of thing that you did not see from Aerosmith. They like or I'd come up listening to Kiss, and that was another thing actually. That was kind of my first band was Kiss, and when I heard the Replacements do Black Diamond, it sort of made me understand that maybe Kiss wasn't as uncool as I thought they were, that they were part of it, because like I said, I was getting into punk and I was sort of embarrassed about my past with Kiss and things like that. But that kind of validated it, made it seem like it's all right, So yeah, I mean, and Sorry Ma is still like one of the great garage rock records I think will ever be recorded. But then Tim, I stuck with him, and Tim was a big one, and then Pleased to Meet Me, and Don't Tell a Soul. I remember I was a little older, and I was a little bit disappointed. It seemed a little slow. But that said, if they came to town, or if they were in town and played a show, we weren't going to miss it.
Right.
But it wasn't still not my favorite record by them. And then by All Shook Down, I'd moved out east and bought that one in Boston. But they're all just, I don't know, like they're, it's the kind of thing that I'll name that tune or something. I bet you I could do most of the Replacements in 2 notes.
What's your all-time favorite song?
I Will Dare. First song off my favorite record, and there's something really romantic in that song to me. Just the sentiment, I will dare. I will dare to go there. I will, and I think that's what Westberg's, from a lyricist standpoint, that makes him so interesting. That he really is able. He is a romantic, and he is able to capture kind of that vulnerable part of the human experience. Like if you will dare, I will dare.
Well, I mean, growing up so you're 13, 14 at this point, was there advice on the records, whether it be dealing with girls or dealing with life, that somehow you took to heart?
No, I don't know. I'm not really sure about if there was advice to be taken from the Replacements. Although, there was always couple songs on the Replacements albums though that your girlfriend would like. You know what I mean? From Skyway to Swingin' Party or whatever. Again, they showed all different sides of this thing. So I think that's one of the great things about them is this range of human emotion.
Let's talk about Minneapolis for a bit. Interesting. I'm getting all kinds of different thoughts about Minneapolis, from going down to Chapel Hill and talking to Mac from Superchunk and Matt Gentling from the Arches of Loaf, like saying, well, and I thought here, I'm thinking that here you are in Chapel Hill, you see a little town like Minneapolis can do it, we can do it too, and they're both like, no, Minneapolis was Mecca, it was the Golden City. You being in Minneapolis, did you guys know what you had?
Well, I always think that I caught a big break in my life when my parents decided to move from Boston to Minneapolis when I was in grade school, because when I went to, I do believe I was able to be in a city where something really exciting was happening. I had 2 American rock and roll's greatest bands were playing shows regularly when I was in high school, all ages shows, So that was really cool. I think that, But then again, I was not old enough to go to bars, so I don't. I'm sure. People, I remember hearing people say, "Oh, these bands are moving into town and they're going to try to make it here," which seems kind of silly because it's still a pretty small town. But I think the one thing about Minneapolis that I think is those bands changed Minneapolis in the way that I still think when I lived in Minneapolis in my 20s, people go to shows regularly that I think if they lived in a different city, they wouldn't go to shows. I mean, you have First Avenue, which is a great club that's been there forever, and it's well run, and you know what's happening there. But I think that they really made it part of Minneapolis's fabric. Putting music, along with Prince, of course, but I think it's a little different. I think that playing in bands, going to see bands, is part of social life in Minneapolis more so than I think it is in a lot of cities.
I mean, from one of a really good friend lives in Minneapolis, and I live in New Haven. In New Haven, you think you have Yale and you have Toads, which is a very good club.
Great club.
But it doesn't get what First Avenue gets, and there's certainly, you would think that with Yale there'd be support, but most of the time they don't get shows at Toads because most of the time they can't sell them out.
First Avenue is really a huge. I mean, after you travel around, play a couple thousand shows. We were just there, and it was like we'd had a kind of a wild show the night before in a way that the promoter passed out, and it was trouble getting paid and all that, and just going to First Avenue's arms and knowing everything was going to be perfect is such a dream. And I feel like that's people who do what we do for a living are all say the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, everyone seems to like. Sony treated us like gold.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah.
Really, we actually interviewed Grant Hart.
Nice.
In the basement of
the Entry.
The Entry.
Yeah, cool.
And she's like, I really don't want you guys going in there. And Grant's like, that's where we're filming, Sonya.
Yeah.
And we went down there, and it's just like, what a location.
Oh yeah, there's some wild stuff's gone down in there.
Great look. It's my favorite location in this entire film.
Yeah. It's real.
He's sitting on the couch, and it's a wide shot.
Yeah.
It's really cool. But those are two of the other people we talked
to,
Grant and Greg.
Sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, at the time though, let's talk. Let's switch it. Change. You being in a band that's had pretty good success for, I don't know what we call them anymore, indie bands.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Definitely critical darlings as they were, but really seem to be doing much well, and not. You don't seem to be shooting yourselves in the foot. We're dated. That's where I'm leading with this. Do you sometimes look at them and go, if only they didn't get banned from Saturday Night Live, if only they had done a video that MTV had played, they could have been REM instead of, or was that just them? That's just,
I feel like that's some of that shooting themselves in the foot is just them, and that self-depreciating thing was part of their thing, and it, I think some of it was probably born out of insecurity, but some of that insecurity was captured to make some of that vulnerability that I'm talking about, that made them great. And I think that the Replacements, it's hard for me to for us to go and play headline a show in a place where I saw them play at their peak. It's very humbling for me. I'm like, oh my God, this is this is the same place. We're at this, at least playing the same places. But I do think the Replacements' legacy is very well protected and very well formed. And obviously, you hear the rumors about reunion shows or whatever, and if that were to happen, I think you'd see how many people. And you're making a movie. I think how many people love the Replacements, and there are bands that might have been their same size that haven't aged as well or aren't thought of the same way, and so I think that's a testament to something real and powerful and staying about the Replacements.
What was it like the first time you played in the Entry?
The first time I played in the Entry, it was I can't remember. It was when I was young. I had a high school band, and we did the new band night they did on Tuesday nights. You could just sign up and play, and we just wanted to play the Entry. We thought it was a big deal, because we'd go to shows there. I remember the first time playing the main room in First Avenue was like, I was just
That's hold steady or lifter?
lifter puller,
Okay.
and I felt like I could just about give up. You know, I mean, like that was kind of all the goals had been met, you know. But I guess you know you just get into it, and I don't know. I mean, I think that you know you have these small goals, and you say like, well, I just want to play the entry. It's like, well, I just want to play the main room, and then it's like, I just want to play a show out of town.
Yeah.
I just want to play in Chicago, and then they just keep going up, and then you're like, you know, next thing you know, it's your whole life. Or,
It's a good thing when it's your life.
yeah.
You know, and you're not working on the job.
Yeah, no, that is a very good thing.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I think that's what and both Westerberg and Tommy. You know, I think and have been able to.
Yeah,
pull that off.
yeah. No, I mean, you know, to be able to do that, what you really truly love for a living is a blessing. And, you know, I turned 30. I was working in an office, so the Hold Steady has brought me into that at a later part of life, which has provided some perspective. You know, I think that things would have been different for me emotionally if some of the success we have with this band had come when I was like 22 or 23.
Mm-hmm. Did now you the whole steady grew out of Brooklyn, right? You didn't start
Yeah,
in-
we started. Ted and I were in Lifter Puller. I moved to New York. He moved to New York a couple years later. We decided we wanted to try to start doing a band. The other two guys, though, had been in bands in Minneapolis, but we'd never played with them. But we just kind of knew they were good because we'd seen them before.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a Brooklyn thing. Although, sing a lot about Minneapolis, and still I think have our biggest.
Real loud.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we still have a lot of our shows are still biggest in that region of the country.
Yeah, I would imagine it's like yeah. It's like we were. When did you play? Was it late
July
April?
4th.
Oh, that's what. Okay, I remember seeing the flyers. It was really shortly, like within a week of when we were in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
It
It was two big shows. There was like, you know, one outdoor thing was like 2,500 people, and then we sold out First Avenue the next night. So it was a
Yeah.
pretty big homecoming weekend.
Yeah. I had never been in Minneapolis, never been to the place, so I basically Sonny said pick a show. So we went to the Black Keys.
Killer.
Which was very good.
Yeah.
And then Matt Pompier was playing in the Little Room.
Nice.
So yeah, we got to just walk back and forth, and it
Sure.
was, you know, and yeah, it was amazing sound. Which
Yeah.
is nice.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, I know Bowery at times sounds like
Yeah. It
crap.
can, all of them can sound bad, you know what I mean?
But that night it's not, and the Little Room was wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, that's really special.
Yeah. What would you say to a new generation of fan that's like, you know, seeing this at South by Southwest or something, and has maybe never heard Replacements? Some 20-year-old who's like, but loves your band, and like, what would you say to get them to pick up, or what would you tell them to do to
Well-
experience Replacements?
Well, when we started the Hold Steady, I just said I want to be in a smart rock and roll band. I want to have great big guitars and really smart lyrics, and I think that that's the model for that is maybe the Replacements. I would say that there's something for everything in the Replacements, and that's why they're great. You know, there's something big and dumb, and there's something soft and quiet and really sweet, and then there's just some really fun, great moments. You know, I mean, there's some songs that you just like can't hardly wait. I don't necessarily know that there's anything that speaks to me in the lyrics, but I still, you know, it makes me put my fist in the air. It's, you know, but at the same time, it's hard. It's a hard thing to really verbalize. Maybe why they're so great to a young person. Other than that, I meet kids all the time at our shows that are much younger than me who have fallen in love with the Replacements.
Is there anything that I didn't ask you about the band you would love to say about the band?
No, I can't think of anything.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of anything. Other than that, you know, I think the one thing about the Replacements is, I think if there's anything, the four of them together, especially in the original lineup, had something about them that you really wanted. They were so cool together that you really wanted to be not just in a band, but you really wish you could be in their band. And I think that that's something that very few bands have. They were almost like the coolest gang, or the coolest. They were almost like in the Beatles, the way that the four of them just kind of complemented each other so perfectly, or at least my idea of them, that they sort of made such a classic, great band.
Someone said out loud, which I made me smile, and it was in Minneapolis. I don't remember who said it. It might have been Chris Osgood, who said you can picture them all as cartoon characters.
Yes, yeah. And then there was Bob's on the Shit Hits the Fan. He had that cartoon, and actually, I used to get the fanzine called Willpower. There was a fanzine that Bill Callahan did, and there were Replacements cartoons in it, and it was like it would be like The Adventures of Bob, and it would be like Bob going down to the store to buy some beer or something, So yeah, they were very iconic, four of them. It was the perfect kind of symmetrical thing.
So I think you felt that they did lose something with Bob.
I think they lost some chaos when they lost Bob. They still were a great rock and roll band, but Bob is. There's a thing in that Walsh book that was like Westberg to Mars, like a double play ball, but it was Westberg to Mars to Stinson to outer space. Bob was like, sometimes he'd go somewhere musically that it was like Sun Ra or something, it would go really out for a two guitar, bass, and drums. The guitar playing could get real weird for a few seconds in a way that still blows my mind. There's that on YouTube. There's that show from '81 that is some of the guitar playing on that is just unbelievable.
You know what his favorite guitar player was, right? Chris Squires from Yes.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Which
doesn't make any sense, right? But I think he probably was really self-taught, and just like the fingers kind of just did weird things, and he just kind of jammed them in there, Yeah, and also in that footage you forget how charismatic Westerberg was, at that age,
Tommy really looks like a 12-year-old.
He is.
Yeah, I understand, but he looks like it too. That's the.
Yeah, that's the other thing is Tommy was not that much older than me, so there was always people in between us in age, like my friends' older brothers and sisters, who would be like, "Oh, I know Tommy. I went to party with him," or.
Yeah.
So it always seemed like they were kind of within your grasp, even though they were miles away. They certainly weren't hanging out with me.
The Chris Gow wrote the Replacements through. No, I would have thrown Bob Stinson out of my band, and so would have you.
Yeah.
Do you think, knowing the industry, do you think that you could almost say the same thing, or?
Yeah, I think so. I think that some of this things like alcoholism and addiction are cute and funny in books, but if you get real close up to them, they're sad and sometimes pathetic and certainly always frustrating. So, it's hard to blame anyone for what might have happened, especially not knowing what it was really like.
Right. Okay.
Awesome.
I think we're good.
Very good.
Hey, thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Let's just